Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. More than 100 years later, a totem pole taken from a BC First Nation is returned.
We have hundreds of thousands of pieces that need to be returned.
Why this may only be the beginning. Plus, a VPD officer accused of tasering a black man for jaywalking in Vancouver learns his fate, and the details of what happened emerge. Also, the mysterious flying objects that have people guessing in Canada and the U.S.
This is a very serious situation.
The new information while the speculation continues.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. Happy tears on display in Victoria this morning as a totem pole belonging to a BC First Nation begins its journey home. It was taken from the Newhawk Nation more than a century ago and had been housed at the Royal BC Museum. As Susanna De Silva explains, its repatriation is an important step in reconciliation.
Seeing this comes with all the emotions of greeting a long-lost loved one for Hereditary Chief Nxieltwa.
I just don't know how to put it right now, but my grandfather's coming home.
Carved by Chief Nxieltwa's great-grandfather in the mid-1800s, taken from the community more than 100 years ago and placed in the Royal BC Museum when Indigenous traditions had been banned and the community had been decimated by disease.
This was taken during the time of smallpox. That's the hardest part.
The community first asked for it back in 2019, even filing a lawsuit for it. The museum acknowledges it has been a long time, but also says it was a complicated process and one of many to come.
We have hundreds of thousands of pieces that need to be returned or that could be returned. We have 203 First Nations in BC that could potentially ask for something to be returned.
It's helping our young people realize, what the strength of our community was.
But for today, with the official paperwork in order, this was a celebration for the Newhawk people.
My heart just filled with joy and warmth and just feels so good. I could feel his spirit.
We live really far away from Bella Coola, so it's nice having things like this to kind of remember.
Museums are like residential schools to us, and we are trying our best to absorb that. And just happy that my grandfather came through me to make this day happen, and he's here.
After 2 days of ceremony here, the totem will make the 1,000-kilometer trip back home. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Victoria.
And we'll have more on the totem pole's journey coming up later in our show, including more on why Chief Snow's approach to the province and the museum is one of positivity, despite the history of how the pole got there. Well, back here in Vancouver, business owners are trying to bring life back to Chinatown in that neighborhood. And Ottawa has approved new funding to revitalize the historic site, pumping $1.8 million into the community. But as the CBC's Zara Premji explains, the businesses in Chinatown say more needs to be done.
From fragrant and delicious dumplings to thick and juicy meat and plenty more, legacy businesses in Vancouver's Chinatown have been feeding community and creating connections for decades. But between the pandemic, increased homelessness surrounding the area, and increased vandalism, business owners fear Chinatown will only continue to fall apart.
We are struggling and we are fighting for our lives.
And a new injection of $1.8 million from the federal government is being seen as a turning point. It promises the money will go towards
new energy efficient lighting, upgraded storefront windows and doors, new signage, awnings, planters, flower boxes, paintings, and refurbished bricks and tiles, and much more.
That's on top of what the City of Vancouver fronted last month, nearly $1 million to improve safety and reduce vandalism. But businesses say more needs to be done to help surrounding communities.
I understand the direction they're going. It's just not enough for us. We really need a lot more support at this point. I mean, there's still people living on the streets that we really need help with.
His sentiments echoed by Joey Wong, who took over his family business that's been around for more than 50 years.
It's a way to start, but we do need a lot more help in, say helping the legacy businesses or even opening up new shops in Chinatown.
While thankful for this new money, members of the Chinatown community don't want to be forgotten.
Please keep us at your priority list. Please keep us, at your purview, and we need everything.
And they say this is a good start that they hope will be just the beginning of their neighborhood's revival. Zara Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
Some peer support services across BC will be getting part of a $16 million funding injection from the province. The money will go to various Foundry locations. The organization offers access to supports for youths aged 12 to 24 in areas such as mental health and peer supports. With the shortage of healthcare and social services workers, the province hopes the new funding will allow for the hiring of young people in the peer support field.
This funding today will help increase that reach to more young people. The Youth Peer Support Worker Program also creates career entry points for youth facing barriers to employment. Removing barriers to employment, especially for people facing multiple barriers, is one of my key priorities as Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
Malcolmson also said today that as many as 76 new full-time peer support workers could be hired with the funding. Currently, there are about 20 part-time workers at the Foundry centres across BC. Well, a freelance photojournalist arrested at an anti-pipeline protest in northern BC is now suing the RCMP. Amber Bracken and editorial leaders from the Narwhal are starting legal proceedings against the Mounties for wrongful arrest, wrongful detention, and violation of charter rights. Bracken says she felt kidnapped when she was arrested in November of 2021 alongside several people opposed to the Coastal GasLink pipeline. Police had been looking to enforce an injunction allowing pipeline construction to move forward. Members of the Wet'suwet'en established the resistance camp in September of 2021, stopping plans to drill a tunnel under the Maurice River. A Vancouver police officer, Constable Jared Sidhu, has been found guilty of assault with a weapon during an arrest. The incident, which was caught on video, shows officers arresting Jameel Moore Williams on the Granville Strip. The video shows him being forced to the ground and tasered multiple times. At the time, police issued him a ticket for jaywalking and obstruction of justice. The charges have since been stayed. Moore Williams says he was targeted because of his race. He has an ongoing civil suit against the city. Well, newly obtained data shows Indigenous and Black people have more interactions with police in BC, which advocates say underscores the prevalence of systemic racism in the police force. General occurrence reports filed by BC's municipal police departments from 2016 to 2021, excluding the newly formed Surrey Police Service, show that over the 6-year period, Black and Indigenous people had disproportionately high numbers of police calls made against them. They also had more charges recommended against them.
As a racialized person that spends a lot of time connecting with folks who have had experiences with the police, mostly negative experiences, this information is not a surprise to me. To see it codified, to see it in concrete terms, just lets me know that our experience is not invalid.
Advocates say the data shows the impact of policing on particular marginalized communities and how the data shows in Vancouver, Indigenous people were 6 times likelier than a white person to have police called on them. And that funding should be reallocated to community-driven causes. The data covers thousands of police interactions across BC, including traffic calls, dealings with youth under 18, and street checks. The future of the Stanley Park bike temporary lane is to be decided tonight, and some are hoping that campaign promises to improve safety for bikers will be upheld.
It's a really an equity issue. 2 lanes for cars and no lanes for bikes is only going to induce motor vehicle traffic into the park and exclude people who are not confident enough to mix it with motor vehicles.
The park board will decide from 3 options. Options A and B both involve constructing interim bike lanes around the park, providing a semi-permanent lane by the summer. And option C is to simply return to pre-pandemic traffic flows around the entire park. This is the least expensive option. Well, it's no secret the ongoing healthcare crisis has doctors and nurses burnt out and is leading to longer wait times for patients. To help ease the burden, healthcare advocates are urging the province to hire physician assistants. But as Yasmin Gandam reports, it's not permitted in BC.
Work with physicians to just kind of be a force multiplier for them.
Gabriel Damone is originally from BC, but is now working as a physician assistant with the Canadian Armed Forces, based out of Halifax. His role is to see patients deal with common ailments, allowing doctors to have more time to assist more people.
You know, when there's a shortage of physicians, to be able to use somebody like a PA as not a stopgap, but just an adjunct would be very helpful.
Damone wants to return to work in British Columbia, but in this province, physician assistants are not allowed to operate or be employed by the healthcare system.
We haven't really been given an answer or a straight answer as to why.
What we need are better teams, better healthcare teams, and physician assistants can definitely be a good part of that.
Other provinces and the Canadian military use physician assistants. Recently, a Port Hardy doctor called out the province for not making them an option.
I am advocating for physician assistants because I have only one set of hands.
Dr. Nataros is temporarily suspended from working in the emergency room after Island Health says it received complaints about the quality of his care. Green Party leader Sonia Furstano says those already working in the healthcare system need support so they can better help the many British Columbians without adequate care.
We need to focus on the health and well-being of British Columbians, and to achieve that, we need to ensure that the health and well-being of doctors and healthcare professionals is also being taken care of.
She'd like the health minister to add other layers of support, like physician's assistants. Her concern echoed by the director for the Canadian Association of Physician Assistants.
Physicians supervise PAs and delegate responsibilities to us so that they can see more patients and spend more time seeing critical patients.
While the Ministry of Health hasn't responded to CBC's questions on this recent push for PAs, in December they said the ministry continues to assess the option of physician assistants. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
A pod of southern resident killer whales made an appearance in Burrard Inlet this weekend. Stanley Park Ecology Society volunteers were on their way to do a bird survey at Brockton Point when they saw the orcas. Fisheries and Oceans Canada says it's not unusual to see orcas in that area, and there are rules about boaters and how they can't follow around the whales. It never gets old, does it?
It never gets old, I know. And, you know, I saw this story last night, and even this morning, you know, crossing the bridge, I was like, are you still there? We're always looking out, aren't we, just in case?
Always. You got to get your whale call and make them come out. If anyone can do it, I feel like it's you, Jo.
Yeah, I'm determined to get that shot and that spot one day. I've got another beautiful picture, though, to show you. Not quite surfacing orcas, but take a look at the time lapse from early this morning. It was really nice to see the clouds clear and the sun come out sort of mid-morning. There's the blue sky. Took a little longer for the clouds to clear on the North Shore, especially at the tops of our locals, but it was nice to see the blue to start things off. Increasing cloud this afternoon, and we are now waiting for the winds. We are still under that wind warning, and things are picking up. I'm seeing gusts across Metro Vancouver, out towards the Fraser Valley, really areas that are sort of more exposed, closer to the water, but these winds are coming in from the northwest. And I am seeing gusts between 50 and 60 kilometers per hour. YVR now reporting 50 kilometer per hour gusts, and we're seeing that right across the strait as well. So the next couple of hours, those winds will increase, and sort of before the midnight hour, we may see gusts to 90 kilometers per hour across Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria area through the Fraser Valley. These winds are coming in again from the northwest. We may end up with some isolated power outages if we see any trees come down. It's a short event, but we are under that wind warning tonight. It's all thanks to this low pressure system that sort of dragged down faster winds in our upper atmosphere. And I've actually put the isobars on. Those are lines of equal pressure. And the closer they are together, the stronger the wind. So we're really seeing that between two pressure systems through the overnight. It's short-lived, as I mentioned. We clear right back out for tomorrow. And we also see those winds ease, and it's not until Thursday, Anita, that we get the next system moving in. So just a windy next couple of hours, and then we can take a breath tomorrow.
All right. We'll talk to you soon, Joe. Thanks.
You're welcome.
More on our top story now, and the totem pole taken from a BC First Nation being returned today. Snook-Yel-Twa totem pole is now headed back to its home near Bella Coola. But this is just the start. Chief Derek Snow and the Newhawk Nation are now trying to get back other artifacts of theirs at the Royal BC Museum, as promised by the BC government. Arlene Young caught up with him to talk more about it.
Keep your promise.
Thank you. Thank you.
We got a lot of work to do.
There's many more things that are in storage. There's many more things in the museum that have to go back to our people.
Do you feel like they kept their promise?
I shook this guy's hand and I said, there's something you got to do is keep your promise. Then you won't have too much trouble in Parliament.
Yes, and not as many lawsuits coming their way. I wanted to ask you, I was hoping you could help me understand. I know you've said before that you felt like the pole was stolen, but at the same time you thank the museum for taking care of it. You don't feel anger or resentment? Like, where's that gratitude coming from?
Even though we went through so much trouble, why are we doing it this way? If you want something, and you have to fight and battle for it, and the spirit that you put in the totem pole, if you put that bad spirit in that totem pole, it's not going to come back. If I put my fist up or took a gun out, that totem pole wouldn't come back. We wanted to do it in a nice, respectful way. We left it open all the time for working it out of court. We didn't want to go through that battle in the courts.
But at the end of the day, it was about making sure there was that good energy.
Get that totem pole home.
Right. Do what it takes.
Do what it takes to get that totem pole home.
But approach it from a positive way at the end.
And then it goes back to, well, what's next? And that's basically what I've been taught along the way, to do it this way.
The fact that we are seeing this in a significant degree over the past week is a cause for interest.
It's a mystery that's gripping both Canada and the U.S. Flight objects shot from the sky. No one seems to know what they are, but we will tell you what we know later in the show. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Some call themselves sneakerheads, and today the world of sneakers is a multi-million-dollar scene. In Edmonton, the culture has been growing for years, but TikTok, Instagram, and e-commerce have opened the community to a whole new generation of collectors. Take a look.
My name is Camille, and I am shooting a really fun segment here with CBC. They're in my house. They're taking their videos. They're shining their cameras and their lights. And as you can see, it's going to involve sneakers.
Probably had about 1,400 pairs.
These are the Jay-Z Rockefeller sneakers.
It's usually black, but yeah, the heat triggers it.
Yeah, between 6,000 and 8,000, I guess, US. It's definitely out of my price range.
Every shoe has a story and a history behind it.
It probably all started with hip-hop culture. Run DMC and the Adidas shell toe, you know, Air Jordan, Michael Jordan with the Jordan 1. Like, I collected pretty much like all shoes. Anything that would tickle my fancy, I would buy. And whenever I travel, when I was in Detroit, go sneaker shop in New York, sneaker shop. See, when I was buying shoes, though, there wasn't a term sneakerhead. I was just doing it because I liked shoes. When Foosh started in 1999, there were shops here in Edmonton where you can buy like cool Nikes and stuff, but I just kind of wanted to bring my little flavor into the city. I think the Tiffany Dunks would be the most expensive pair that I have. A lot of the companies that we work with, they have specific dates on when shoes should drop. We would then do like a drop in store, first come, first serve.
People would be waiting outside at the stores sometimes in -30 weather
Sometimes they would line up the night before and be lined up overnight, and that's how they got to meet the people that they talked to online.
It's definitely grown massively, and I think it's shown in the number of stores that have opened in Edmonton that focus on either sneakers specifically or cultures adjacent to them.
Sneakerhead check.
An underrated conversation starter is what's on your feet. Here we have the Shadow Satin Jordan 1. These are a grail. These were designed by a woman of color, a black girl. And I think that's why it's such a significant shoe in my collection. Because I'm a woman, I can wear heels, no problem. I can wear a dress, no problem. But I can also rock a fresh pair of kicks.
I think there's always going to be a need for sneakers, but I think there's different outlets on how to access information on sneakers now that they have Instagram. So it's more so like a niche culture, but now it's become more mainstream.
With sneakers being so fire right now, it's just gonna keep on skyrocketing. It's cool to see from when I started to where it is now.
It's a good way to kind of express your individuality. It's nice just to have a sneaker that nobody else has.
When I first started collecting, I didn't really see many women. I honestly think women are taking over, and you're gonna see more women designing kicks for sure. And I love it.
With Valentine's Day coming up tomorrow, many people are thinking with their hearts. But what about our hearts? This is what we're talking about in our bi-weekly doctor segment today. Research out of the U.S. finds deaths from heart attacks across all age groups have become more common, but there's been a big increase in people between 25 and 44. Now, according to the Canadian Heart and Stroke Foundation, doctors are becoming more concerned about high blood pressure, and more people are being diagnosed with it at an earlier age. Dr. Lem is with us now. Dr. Lem, can you tell us more about the research indicating that more young people are getting heart attacks?
Well, let's start with the overall statistics in this research. So it showed that adults over 65 increased their heart attack deaths by 14% during the pandemic. In adults from 45 to 64, it increased by 20%. And in young adults from 25 to 44, it was a whopping 30% increase in heart attack deaths during the pandemic. And the interesting thing is that during spikes in COVID cases in the community, that's when cases of heart attack deaths increased. So something really interesting, which I think really makes these statistics more significant, is that over the past 2 decades, overall heart disease diagnoses within Canada have in fact been decreasing. So in fact, 25% fewer cases of heart disease were diagnosed in all age groups between 2000 and 2018. So in the past 2 years, we've in fact seen a reversal in the benefits to heart disease that we've seen over the past 2 decades.
So why is that? Is it COVID related, or is it that people's lifestyles have changed during those 2 years?
There are all kinds of different explanations for this. So one theory is that people had less access to healthcare, so saw their family doctors less, had less kind of preventative healthcare provided. Also, people didn't want to go to hospitals during the height of the pandemic, so they presented later when they actually had heart attacks and had worse outcomes. Another theory is there's increased stress due to job loss and social pressures. But in fact, what the prevailing theory is right now is that COVID-19 infection itself actually increased heart attacks. So COVID-19 is a disease of inflammation, makes your blood stickier, increases your risk of clots, makes those plaques in your coronary arteries rupture more easily. And so the thinking is that younger adults, because they had stronger immune responses to the actual COVID infection, had more inflammation, leading to higher increases in heart disease and heart attacks.
Okay, so what can people, all people, but young people in particular, do to combat heart disease?
The first thing is you have to know if you're at risk. So number one, keep in mind the cardiovascular disease risk factors. So common ones would be obesity, smoking, sedentary behavior, unhealthy diet, and family history. So if you have any of those risk factors, talk to your family doctor and get screened for other cardiovascular increasing risk factors like diabetes or cholesterol issues or high blood pressure. These are silent diseases that can actually cause damage in the background. But especially important during the pandemic is to avoid catching COVID-19 as many times as you can, because actually every time you catch it increases your disease risk further. So get fully vaccinated, get those boosters, wear masks indoors when you can, ventilate indoor spaces, and then those investments that we put into our health now will really pay off in the future.
Dr. Melissa Lem, thank you.
Thanks.
Coming up, more high-stakes drama in Toronto. John Tory resigned as mayor following an affair with a former staffer. Why he thinks he should stay on for a few more weeks.
Getting a cab on a Vancouver street is not that easy. In fact, it's legally impossible. A city bylaw doesn't allow you to hail a taxi. You have to go to a cab stand or phone one like I did today. Take me to the main entrance to Expo, please.
Yes, sir.
In the jargon of the specialist, taxis are called paratransit vehicles. But to the hundreds of Vancouver passengers who use them each day, they are plain taxi or cab. So it's not surprising that, like all modern cities, Vancouver depends on taxis. All the more so when Expo begins. Drivers like George Theodoropoulos, who has driven cab for 11 years, are counting on Expo for their biggest year yet.
As a driver, do you think that this Expo year will be the biggest for you?
I sure hope so. Should be. Business should be, but if you work the system properly, try to avoid the traffic jams which are going to be around, it should be a very good year.
George didn't mention it, but taxi passengers will get a break during Expo too. Vancouver's licensed cabs will not be raising their rates during the fair. Computer dispatching of cabs brought in by two companies to speed up service has arrived. And by the time Expo begins, the gremlins should be cleared from the new system. To make it easier for the visitors to get a cab, the city will designate 60 new taxi spaces at Expo's 3 entrances. And Expo visitors will soon discover what Vancouverites have known for years, that taxis are a necessary and popular link in the city's transportation system.
Vancouverites can manage with the city's odd taxi rules. Out-of-towners have to learn the hard way. Waiting for another taxi at the entrance to Expo 86 for World Stage 86, I'm Cam Cathcart.
More details are emerging tonight about the latest unidentified objects to be shot down over North America. Canadian and U.S. officials are hoping to get some answers by searching for the debris and figuring out where these objects came from. But as Katie Simpson reports, that will take time.
The conditions are brutal, but the hunt for debris in the Yukon continues. Military planes from across the country are joining the search, an urgent push for answers at a time when little is known.
Obviously, there is some sort of pattern in there. The fact that we are seeing this in a significant degree over the past week is a cause for interest.
All 3 of the unidentified flying objects shot down since Friday have similarities. They all seem to float and had no known propulsion system. The objects were unmanned, and they were located at altitudes that posed a danger to civil aviation. That's much lower than the Chinese spy balloon. Since its discovery, NORAD has intensified how it monitors radar, which may partially explain the sudden surge in sightings.
One of the reasons that we think we're seeing more is because we're looking for more.
Fighter jets were scrambled to shoot down all 3 objects. The first in Alaska on Friday, landing on dangerous ice. An object was then taken down over the Yukon on Saturday. The search area near Dawson City covers some 3,000 square kilometers. And we now know the third was actually first detected over southern Alberta before it was picked up over Montana on Saturday night. By the time it was shot down over Lake Huron on Sunday, it had crossed over at least one sensitive U.S. military site. All these objects are surprising even to the experts.
Well, I have to say that from my time as deputy commander of NORAD, I had no indication while I was down there that anything like this was floating over continental North America.
As speculation about their origins runs rampant, there's one theory intelligence leaders are trying to shut down.
I don't think the American people need to worry about aliens with respect to these craft, period. I don't think there's
That's Katie Simpson reporting tonight. To Ottawa now, where the premiers have agreed to accept the health care funding deal offered to them by the federal government. As Rafi Boudjikanian reports, last week, the feds said they would increase the amount transferred to provinces and territories to about $46 billion over a 10-year period.
The day started with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pressing his charm offensive in the Yukon while he tried to push his healthcare deal to provinces and territories.
We know how much of a priority that is for Canadians.
But the bigger conversation about the issue didn't involve him. It was the provincial and territorial premiers speaking together about what's on offer from Ottawa. $196 billion over the next decade, $46.2 billion of that in new money, far short of the Premier's ask. But today,
we will be accepting the money from the federal government, but also recognizing that this does not represent what is a long-term funding need for our healthcare systems across the country. We've accepted this for now, but we will move on to the bilateral agreements.
No point in dragging the feet. We're just interested in moving forward and getting on with making the investments in healthcare that will make healthcare more accessible for Nova Scotians and for Canadians.
Federal ministers met Tim Houston today. Those side deals a big focus.
We spoke about what matters to Nova Scotians, greater access to family medicine, reducing backlogs. We believe that there is a great momentum to come to agreements in principle quite quickly.
But with budgets from the federal government and provinces and territories around the corner, time is a factor to sign those individual deals in the coming days. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Toronto Mayor John Tory announced his resignation only days ago, but it looks like he'll be staying on just a little bit longer ahead of a budget meeting on Wednesday. The CBC's Thomas Dagla reports.
Behind closed doors in the mayor's office, John Tory spent the day meeting with city councillors, planning his next steps. Turns out, he's not leaving just yet.
I'm actually relieved he's going to be there in council on Wednesday to make sure that doesn't turn into a chaotic mess.
On Wednesday, Tory's spokesman confirms the embattled mayor will still be acting as mayor, overseeing crucial budget votes, trying to ensure his plans remain Toronto policy for the next year.
This is the mayor's budget with his fingerprints and his stamp all over it.
Thank you.
When Tory announced he's resigning over an affair with a former staff member, it sent shockwaves through Canada's biggest city. His longtime critics say now's the time to refocus Toronto's priorities.
Transit fares are going up while the service is decreasing. It's a city where you can't afford rent. He's basically saying, even if I'm not fit for this job, you can't stop me from getting my agenda through.
Then again, the mayor's supporters want him to go a step further and call off the resignation altogether. For now, Tory is hearing them out.
He's been a good representative of the city, and I'll continue to believe if he decided to change his mind and stay, I would support that.
Conspicuously silent through it all, Deputy Mayor Jennifer McKelvey, poised to temporarily take over the top job whenever Tory does leave. She's been speaking with councillors in private.
She was in shock, and, but like the rest of us, we're just trying to figure things out. We're trying to absorb all this.
Amid all of this, city staff are scrambling to plan a potential spring by-election. The timeline is up in the air as Tory stays put for now. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, if you're a regular at Starbucks, you may have noticed the recent changes to its reward system. Customers now need to earn more points to grab the same free pick-me-up. As Anita Bathe reports, some are questioning the coffee giant's decision to water down its loyalty program.
There are changes on the outside of this Starbucks, but inside too. The chain is changing how it hands out rewards.
I need it.
Which means less free coffee for these customers.
I do go to Starbucks and spend the money so I can get the stars and use them when I need it. So that does bother me a lot. Yeah, I probably won't go as often anymore.
Each time you use it to pay at Starbucks. In some cases, Starbucks is doubling what you need for a free Java. Now it's 100 points for what used to cost 50. The company has told its investors it wants the price in points to better match the price in actual money. But marketers say frustrated consumers may speak up.
Making it more difficult, I think, could be a big challenge for Starbucks. I know they're big and I know that they have a loyal following, but every now and then you still need to show your customers a bit more appreciation. So I'm feeling like this might backfire on them a bit.
It's not just Starbucks cutting back. Tim Hortons customers will also be spending more on coffee or Timbits to get that free muffin. Experts in the world of reward points call this devaluation.
You can see devaluations as inflation for points, for sure. I mean, we see it across the board with a lot of different programs in all industries.
And customers may not always notice that inflation.
Especially with these kind of just restaurant or coffee type programs. People just join them because, hey, you know what, I go there every day, I get my coffee, I might as well be rewarded for it. And you still will be, but less now.
Whether it's a free Frappuccino or a complimentary cruller, points inflation means fewer rewards for Canadians. Anita Bathe, CBC News, Calgary.
In Ottawa, at least 12 people are injured after a gas leak triggered an explosion in a residential neighborhood. It was so powerful that it could be felt in the surrounding area. Now, several homes have also been destroyed, and neighbors living near the site show us what the force did to their houses. Nicole Williams reports.
The glass is all shattered over here. The wall is all cracked. The ceiling has come down.
This is what people in the neighborhood woke up to. Damaged homes after a sudden and terrifying blast. This man came to check on his friends here after feeling his entire home shake.
One of our nieces, she just woke up and she started crying, right? Because we all were fast asleep and we couldn't figure it out. So
the owner of this home says she was asleep when the blast went off just before 6:30 this morning, causing instant panic.
And all of a sudden we heard like a loud explosion. It felt like an earthquake, honestly, at the first time. Me, my husband, and my son, we just came down to see what happened, and we saw like all the people like in our community were like outside, and like everyone was wondering like what is actually happening, because nobody knew like exactly what took place.
All over the neighborhood you can see the impact. Broken windows, broken doors, homes covered in debris. This couple was also shaken out of bed.
But we didn't really know what was going on. Our alarm system started going off because our front door flew open. It broke our front door and our garage, and then our garage door on the inside, like it all just busted open. So our alarm was going off. We like weren't sure if someone broke in or like if it was like an earthquake or a tornado or something. Like we were just kind of like running around.
It's unclear just how widespread the damage is. Emergency crews are still investigating, but some witnesses say they felt the blast up to a kilometer away. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
Really wanted to dance, but I don't know where we could go where we wouldn't feel like we're 1,000 years old.
It's touted as the best dance party for early risers. Home by Midnight offers those who love to dance the chance to do just that without having to make it a late night. We'll hear from the organizers about what prompted the early start.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back. Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, if you're in the mood for a party but not a late night, a BC group called Home by Midnight is making it easier to do just that. They're opening their doors at dusk and sending dancers home by midnight. The CBC's Anita Bathe has more.
It may seem like any late night party, from the DJ, bright lights to the booze, but all these guests share a goal.
A common denominator is that desire to be home early.
This is Home by Midnight, a group dedicated to parents and those who say they love to dance, hate clubbing, and need to be up at a reasonable hour.
So you can get home and get in bed by midnight. And then get up in the morning and be with your kids or take them to soccer practice or just, go about your day.
While in many clubs, the party starts late, here the beats are bumping, nice and early. These moms have waited months for a night like this.
We like to have fun, but we're all parents of children that are in elementary school, and we need to be home by midnight.
We really wanted to dance, but I don't know where we could go where we wouldn't feel like we're 1,000 years old.
Parents are letting loose, living their best life for the night, joining their closest friends.
Yeah, well, often, you get these opportunities at limited events, like weddings, and so you got to wait for a wedding before you get to go dancing.
Similar parties are also being hosted in the U.S. This New York Times article mentions Before Midnight, another event for music fans who are juggling children and careers. Meanwhile, this group started in 2018, and after taking a break during the pandemic, the dance shoes are back on, with parties every other month, and the guest list keeps growing.
We've sold out every night we've done this.
Their hope is to bring the party to other parts of the province. And while some of these parents are ready to call it a night, these party goers in the Granville Entertainment District are just beginning. Anita Bathe, CBC News, Vancouver.
So I'm 1,000% into this. My husband and I went out on Friday. We finished dinner at 10, and he's like, okay, where can we party? And I said, let's go home.
That sounds like a dream evening. Yeah, I want to start the club home before 10. That's even better.
I love it.
10 p.m.
I think you can make some big bucks there, Joe.
I think so, yeah. I also am going to have to talk to Benit off camera and really hear how late she stayed out, because
Benit's young. She can
handle it. What did she do for the rest of the night? Yeah, give us some inspiration. Home before 10 sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
We are tracking some winds that are really ramping up just during that 10 p.m. to midnight window tonight. Still seeing the wind gusts at YVR between sort of 50 and 60 kilometers per hour. So wind warnings in place for Victoria, Metro Vancouver, the west side of the island, where your winds are gusting closer to 100 kilometers per hour overnight tonight. And then a general special weather statement for the Sunshine Coast and the east side of the island for gusts to 70 kilometers per hour. So this is within our warning criteria. It might not feel like it right now, but things are going to ramp up quickly, but for a short period of time. So potential to see some localized power outages, some possible branches down. I might just want to think about charging your phone right now. That's not the worst idea across the south coast with this system that is also bringing some isolated convective weather. We're seeing some snow on the island beginning to clear, but basically the Malahat inland getting some snow. Duncan, you're sort of in a mixed bag right now. Victoria's been raining for most of the day. We may see in the next couple of hours, I know we've lost the light, but not out of the question, we could get an evening pocket of a downpour or even some small size hail across Metro Vancouver. Once we get through this overnight or late evening system, I should say, well past our bedtimes, Anita, we will be getting back into clearing and calming skies for our Tuesday. And then we're going to look to see temperatures really cool down over the next couple of days. Nothing dramatic, just a good 3 to 4 degrees cooler than where we were at this weekend. And that goes for most of the province. Again, not too far below the seasonal mark, but definitely looking at those early morning temperatures tomorrow. And then again, Wednesday morning below the freezing mark. And because we have clear skies, we could see some frost on the roads and on the sidewalks. Just keep that in mind. We haven't had that frost in a while, so things might be a little slippery out there. Looking forward to seeing the sunshine for your Tuesday, though. Highs just a 5, and seasonals for this time of the year are now back up around 7 or 8. Just a 4 for Wednesday. Then we get back into the next weather maker. I think we'll see increasing clouds on Wednesday, showers for Thursday and Friday. I'm going to keep my eye on some breaks. Maybe I'm being too optimistic about these sunshine breaks on Saturday, but not out of the question. The models will be going back and forth on how much rain. And it doesn't look like a lot. These are just very much showers until we get to some steadier rain on Sunday and sunshine back for early next week. So a lot more sun than we've seen in quite a while, Anita, and I think that will make a lot of people happy.
I think so. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, there's growing anger in Turkey over why so many buildings collapsed in last week's earthquake. Authorities have pledged to crack down on those responsible for poorly made structures. But as Abby Kugadasan tells us, others are putting the blame elsewhere.
More than a week after the devastating earthquake, a young girl is pulled alive from beneath the concrete and metal in Adiyaman. These miraculous moments are becoming rarer.
Building inside is super dangerously collapsed. We are digging with our nails. One by one, slowly, slowly, slowly.
Thousands of buildings have toppled over across 10 provinces, leaving many without a home. Many buildings didn't just come down.
They've collapsed into small fragments. One of the unfortunate consequences of that is that there are very few void spaces. In other words, holes in the wreckage where we might find people alive waiting to be rescued.
Officials say 131 suspects have been identified as being responsible for shoddy construction. Multiple arrests have already been made at Istanbul airport, but the opposition says Erdogan's government hasn't enforced regulations. Critics say his construction amnesty in 2018, which allowed companies to build without safety certificates, made matters worse.
Well, we've got a three-headed dog here. We've got corruption, we've got negligence, and we've got ignorance. The Turkish government has started to issue prosecution notices, more than 100 of those. That, I think, is a little bit hypocritical given the message sent out by the amnesties that the government has given to those who have not followed the rules.
Erdogan has vowed to rebuild. He says hundreds of thousands of structures will be ready within the year, but experts say adequate urban planning takes years, not months. Erdogan came to power after the previous government was blamed for how it managed the response after the major earthquake there in 1999. He now faces similar criticism ahead of elections in May. Abby Kugadasan, CBC News, London.
The CBC's Briar Stewart was there on Friday when a woman was rescued from the quake rubble in southeastern Turkey, thanks in part to efforts of the Burnaby search and rescue crews. The 37-year-old woman is now recovering from the ordeal of being trapped under her apartment building for days. Briar Stewart went to see her.
Inside this hospital room, we meet Özlem Ayna and her mother Gülten. The 37-year-old is recovering after spending more than 100 hours trapped underneath all of this.
Can you tell me about the moment you heard the rescuers looking for you?
It was incredible, she says. He told me to hold his hand. So I squeezed his hand so hard, he told me, "Calm down, we will save you." When the 7.8 magnitude earthquake violently struck southeast Turkey, she woke up to a wardrobe falling on top of her and the building crashing down around her first-floor apartment. In the debris outside, her keepsake box, which was thrown out of her room. I was screaming so loud, she said, my voice went hoarse, so sometimes I lost hope. Shaking uncontrollably from the cold, her mouth was so dry she couldn't swallow. She could hear the rescuers, but they couldn't hear her. She started banging on the stone and concrete, and this is when they knew she was there, and they worked for hours to reach her. A team from Burnaby, BC helped by providing equipment like a camera to find her exact location.
What about that moment when they finally pulled you out of that building?
When they pulled me out, I look at their eyes. They were almost crying.
On the ground, the crowd cheered, but Özlem's mother still didn't believe her daughter was alive until she saw her in the hospital.
Kızım yeniden doğdu, bebeğim.
My daughter was born again, she said. Özlem is bruised and has some kidney damage from being so dehydrated.
Zaten böbrek fonksiyonlarını iyice kaybetmiş olacaktı.
If they didn't save her in the next couple of hours, we'd think she could have lost all of her kidney function, says the nurse, but she's doing well. Her family is so happy, they feel grateful for everyone.
Thank you.
Özlem is thankful for her rescuers, but describes a feeling of broken happiness. 80% of those living in her building were killed. She was only one of a few to survive. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Diyarbakir, Turkey.
Dancing at the Super Bowl, how a Saskatchewan man showcased his talent and Indigenous culture at one of the biggest sporting events. Those details are still to come.
And right now, I believe my name is still Lesagwin. With a name like that, they sure can't mix me up with them censors or with the doctor's missus. So they'll just have to recognize me when I'll be by their side walking down the Queens Highway.
She was a true comedian. She immersed in the role that she played. But for me, I think it was kindness. It was about also how she was a simple person, how she never wanted the glory of anything. For her, it was always about us, and she did that all her life.
Madame Legere is by far a very important people for all the New Brunswick community, the Acadian community. In Caracat particularly, she played a significant role.
I've known Viola since the 50s. She was a member of the same order that I belong to, and I know her quite well, and I have beautiful memories of her, many humorous memories with her. So I'm here to accompany the Legere family in their great sorrow today, but also to thank the Lord for giving us such a beautiful and grand lady.
She was the greatest, one of the greatest ambassadors that we have in Acadian, so it was fundamental for me to be here today.
Being a proud Acadian, I think it's very, very important that we celebrate her life, and today that's what it was. It was a simple but yet dignified ceremony. I think all the right words were said by the people who took the microphone, and I think Acadia should be proud of the person that she was, the service that she rendered to her community. She was one of the giants of our community, so I think it was very important that we'd be here today.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Stream your favorite CBC dramas or comedies 24/7 on demand on the CBC Gem app. Plus, you can live stream CBC Vancouver News. Check it out at gem.cbc.ca. And never miss a special programming series or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Nearly 4 million people visit Banff National Park every year, and many have to travel through the East Gate to get there. Most of us probably don't give those buildings a second thought, but as Helen Pike explains, they do have a bit of a story to tell.
Since the 30s, 3 rustic Tudor revival-style buildings have acted as the gateway to Banff National Park. Parks Canada's Steve Malin says before the highway was twinned, you registered at one building on the way in and signed out as you left the park.
And it was I kind of think of it like a portal from ordinary life into a special place. You knew that you had arrived somewhere when you came to the Banff East Gate. It answered that relentless question from the back seat, are we there yet? Yes, you have arrived in Banff National Park. And it was built and designed in the 1930s and continues to welcome visitors from all over the world today.
More than just a booth to make a payment or be handed a brochure with information on the area, they served as homes for Parks Canada staff throughout the years. The Lane 1 house has an upper floor with 2 rooms for sleeping. The living room is outfitted with a fireplace. It's inviting and cozy. There's even a basement and a backyard. Times have changed. People don't sleep at this gate anymore. Now the buildings serve as more of an office space to 30 employees, a place to take a break from the traffic.
The welcome, the hello, bonjour, welcome to Banff National Park, that hasn't changed, and that is a big part of what makes these gates so special still today.
Helen Pike, CBC News, Banff East Gate.
Well, Rihanna may have been the headliner at yesterday's Super Bowl game, but there's another performance that has people talking. A powwow dancer from Saskatchewan. Patrick Mitsuing was the only Canadian to perform in this dance at the Super Bowl. He's been performing since he was young and is a world champion powwow dancer, but this was his biggest audience ever. This is also the first time the NFL did a land acknowledgement. Mitsuing hopes his performance shows Indigenous youth they deserve to have a space at large global events.
When a big organization like this does the things that they're doing with the Indigenous people, it's putting like a message out there to all the big platforms that have a audience of this magnitude or even smaller too, to do those steps for Indigenous inclusion and create space for us.
Mitsuing credits the work Canada is doing on truth and reconciliation as the driving force behind his appearance at the Super Bowl. Yeah, really great to see, and what a great performance and opportunity. Glad to see Canada represented there for sure. That's it for CBC Vancouver News on this Monday evening. We'll see you tomorrow, Valentine's Day. Have a good night.